All right, here we are again talking about coaching. Today's question is, how do you ascertain if a client is a good fit? All right, so let's dive in straight away. Who would like to get started?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to acknowledge the question. I think it's an important one because the one thing that I've noticed over the years when I looked at the super successful coaches, the one who like make lots and lots and lots of money, and they're quite bold, and like maybe their coaching style is a bit out there. I'm like, something I noticed about them is that they pick their clients very carefully. You know, when you pick your clients carefully to make sure that it's a really good match to what you're offering, that's why they get such powerful results. For example, I mean, I'm quite open to who I work with. Maybe it's because of my kind of existential philosophy that undergrounds my practice. The kind of target group of people in the world with other people. I mean, I got a bit more niche in that sense, but I do like working with different people from a range of different philosophies, ways of working, you know, some very visual, some very cognitive, some very emotional. I like that. It adds excitement to my work, and I need that kind of diversity to keep myself excited. But if you figure out a particular kind of client who fits the kind of coaching that you offer very, very well. For example, when I have, there's a group of clients that kind of work, they're deep thinkers, but they're super competitive. So they're kind of type A personality, and they do all the work, and they're super disciplined, and they can self-regulate. And once they figured out what they want, then, you know, there's no stopping them. And they achieve phenomenal results. It's amazing. But there's other kind of clients who don't kind of have that competitiveness in them. And some of them may be happier because they're less competitive, but certainly there's something about the results and outcomes that they're getting, which is less profound in terms of measuring the income. You know, if you're super competitive and you got to achieve that success, you know, and you got to make that business work, and you're driven by all of the pain of your childhood or whatever it is, you know, you're gonna go very far in terms of how your business grows. And that can be a real joy to work with, depending on what the goals of the coaching are. But the point being is that if you only pick very competitive people who already have a bit of a business background, and perhaps they come in quite charismatic already, and they can talk, and, you know, they can present themselves, and they seem quite confident, whether that's true or not on the inside as well doesn't really, like, it matters. But if you pick those people, they're going to get incredible results on paper, at least. Mm-hmm. So I know some coaches pick them very carefully so that their clients will go through the roof. And that's why I think it can be quite important. Other clients, for example, my wife is a psychoanalyst by training, and she said, well, ideal client, she questioned that kind of concept. It was difficult for her to wrap your head around it, because in psychoanalysis you wouldn't even think about who your ideal client is. The one who's sitting in front of you. You know, you start listening to them, and you kind of, but coaching works a little differently. And if we kind of have that business lens onto it as well, I think it becomes really important how you pick your clients. And I remember last time I was really interested in Siwash, you mentioned you have you pick your clients. I mean, this is not necessarily coaching, but you pick your clients for your school quite carefully as well. So I really wonder what your perspective is on this.
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned some great things already, and for me, and I mentioned this in previous episodes as well, it's all about having experiment mindset. And of course, within the realms of, you don't want to get too crazy, but I've just tried coaching a lot of different people, right? And then slowly I get more and more clear on who energizes me and who drains me. And this is a great exercise that I learned from Rich Litvin, is to make a list of all the people that I've worked with that energize me, and people that I've worked with that drained me, and then looking at their qualities. And by the way, just to make it very clear, they can still be beautiful human beings with great characters, but maybe just not the right person for me or for you to work with, right? So we're all different as coaches. So that's one thing. The second thing, there's this quote, and I'm gonna paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like, if you put one bad grape, in a I think it's called graveyard, no, not sure what it's called, but if you put, I guess it's with any fruit, if you put one piece of bad fruit in a bowl with good pieces, they all go bad.
Did you say
right?
graveyard? I love it.
Exactly. I'm not sure. I'm completely screwing this up, right? But the idea is there. What that was really profound for me, because it's that if you have a community. So I run a lot of groups. But I guess that's also a bit with one-on-one, because you spend a lot of time with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people, if you spend time with people, people have an influence on you, whether you like it or not, right? And we can be very good at creating space and making sure that we have our own practices. But for a lot of the work that I do, it's about connection and community. So when I bring someone into the community, I want to make sure that they're a good fit also for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But again, for people that are not doing groups, just really thinking, well, would you spend time with that person, or would you even bring that person to your house and introduce them to your partner, or if you have kids, to your kids? And again, it's not about becoming close friends, because I think it's important to keep those boundaries, but that's the kind of people I want to work with, people that I would love to spend time with, and just even invite them for a dinner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's so important for coaches to recognize that they have a choice in the matter. Often I hear from coaches that, if a client knocks on their door or they send them an email and they ask for consultation, there is like an obligation to help them. When in fact you can choose your clients. I think therapists can do that less, because somebody is referred to them. They have an obligation of care, the duty of care if somebody's getting sent their way. But I think coaches have a lot more freedom to choose who they would like to work with, not just who they could work with. And I had one of my first coaching trainers. He was a trained psychotherapist before he became a coach. And he says he doesn't do that kind of work anymore, not because he can't help people who come to him with bereavement or trauma or addiction or something like that, but simply because he doesn't want to anymore. Later, at some point, I asked whether he would coach me, and he said, I only work in organizations now. It's not that he can't do that anymore, and it wasn't a matter of price. He's just not interested in that kind of work anymore. So I think there's a choice, and many coaches don't really acknowledge that there is a choice of who to say yes and no.
Yeah, I think that choice is really important. What are your thoughts on this, Nicki?
How do you pick your clients?
I mean, I have to say, so reflecting on my experience to date, and of course it's a lot more narrow and limited than what you guys have had the opportunity to work across.
That's why we're asking.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get it. I guess I'm still in that experimental phase. I think, it's also super personal. As a person, I'm someone who kind of, sees the potential and the best in all people. And I think almost my way of discerning is very intuitive. Like, it is more that energetical, which I think Siwash was getting at with, who drains you, who energizes you. And kind of, whilst I'm very wanting to adapt and be malleable as part of my own learning experience, to become a better coach for more people, to work on that, I accept that there will be limitations. Something that would be a strict limitation for me would perhaps be an ethical difference. If someone came to me and wanted to be coached on how to like cheat on their partner or something crazy like that, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't align with your, with your vision. It's not, it doesn't match my ethics. I wouldn't coach you. On another level, I think, then it becomes a bit more about finding your niche and your interest. And I think, as a coach, and to reflect on what's just been said, it's kind of, I feel like it's not a duty, but it's kind of, it would be almost self-defeating to be a coach and then kind of get suckered into this mindset of I must coach everyone. And I think, as coaches, we want to be empowered. We also want to think about where we can offer the most value and what sets us on fire. So I think it's, keeping those things in mind. And I think something that's really powerful to think about there is kind of, again, it's that idea of not having to come from needing or like the kind of being after the money. It's really being kind of taking a stance on who do I like to work with, where do I offer value, what inspires me, and what aligns with my vision and my purpose for coaching, and choosing based on that, and not having that mindset of getting people through the door and churning it out and being everywhere at the same time, you know? So I guess that's kind of my personal experience and reflections on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just to kind of get quite practical on this, because I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there who are sitting there and say, well, but then how does that look like in practice? And I think some people go very intuitively with that kind of decision. They sit with somebody in a consultation, they have a chemistry call, or they can feel it. They can feel whether that's the right client or not. And from experience, I can say on those occasions where it didn't feel right, and I wasn't quite sure whether I would like to work with this person, and then I've done it anyway because maybe I needed the money, or maybe I really felt passionate about helping this person. I almost always regret is a strong word, but let's say I've had a lot of supervision, and I spend a lot of money on supervision on clients that maybe I didn't need to take on. Again, that same coaching trainer actually that I just referred to earlier often said, with this client that I took on, all the money they brought to me, I paid straight to my supervisor.
Oh no!
So what's the point? And then somebody say, well, the point is to help somebody, but you also don't want to work for free.
Well,
so intuitive is one thing. Go on.
No, I was just that brought something else up. I think it's very similar to just, being in a relationship, dating someone, right? We make choices in a certain way. I've personally never had a one-night stand because I never thought that would be something that is aligned with myself, right? And the same is with coaching. I will, I think in my 4 years coaching, there's 2 people that signed up after one session, and they were like, hey, look, I don't want another session. I really want to do this. I've been following you for a while. But in general, for me, and again, it's not necessarily the right way, but in general, I spend a few sessions with people, and I want to and by the way, I don't talk about coaching, I just get into it, right? And that's one way of doing it, but I really want to get to know them. I want to really know why they're here, what they've tried. And it's very much like dating for me. It's about really finding out, well, okay, I see what's on the surface level, but what's underneath that. Right?
Really driven by curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have so much choice in there, and we can play around with that.
And there's the much more practical element to this, because I know there's a lot of people out there who think quite pragmatically about these things, and there is a different approach to it, whereas you give your client a set of pre-questions before they come into the consultation, or they get attracted by your marketing, which puts your values and beliefs and worldview out there, and usually the people who get attracted to us are probably similar to us. Often the clients that where it gels really well, where it feels really right, we're quite similar. Very often when I go with coaches through this exercise of who your ideal client is, very often it's a version of themselves, and that's natural, and that makes sense because it gels quite well. I think we need to be a bit careful when we take somebody on who's very similar to us, because we make a lot of assumptions about what worked for us might work for them. So we need to be careful, but it is a good fit when somebody's quite similar. But maybe if somebody's very different to you, it might be super, super powerful because you come in with a different perspective, which opens different doors. So I don't think there's a right or wrong of what kind of client you're working with. But you can ask a bunch of questions beforehand or during the consultation to kind of make sure that a client is the right fit. Is it important to you that they're ethically aligned or morally aligned? Is it important to you that they're quite similar to your story, that they resonate with it? Or does it not matter? So there's a lot of questions that a coach needs to ask themselves first in terms of what kind of client do I like to work with? I think there's 2 categories. Who do I like working with? And who do I provide amazing value for? And sometimes they overlap, sometimes they're the same, but they're not necessarily. Sometimes you provide incredible value to somebody who you don't really like working with so much, but you can. It's like a technician who fixes your car, but they're really passionate about working with that old timer in the back, but they can fix the exhaust pipe of your Vauxhall Corsa You know, it's just like sometimes you apply skills, the coaching skills, to create a space where somebody can figure stuff out. Lots of coaches I supervise in organizations, they're not so passionate about some of the coaching work that they do, but it's a job and they do it because they can provide great value. So I think these are some of the important questions we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's also sometimes to be okay with just actually going sometimes on at the first, you know, when you first meet someone, it looks maybe that person is not a great client or not a great potential client. But I've often had that when I just got into a conversation, you know, I get really surprised. And I've had the same thing in the other way where I thought, wow, could be an amazing client, like a dream client. And I've had one or two conversations. I'm like, no, this is actually not the kind of person I want to work with. So it's really nice also to just really go with that and not always make assumptions, because sometimes we see something on face value and we just want to sometimes go there. I think there's a lot of growth that can come for us coaches to go to places that, you know, we're not used to.
Yeah, and it gets really interesting with that, with the pre-questions, because at some point there will be a lot more people asking you for coaching than you can actually have consultations with. And right now I chose my consultations to be quite long because I want to really get to know somebody like that. I'm similar to you there, Siwash. But I like, how do you say yes or no to certain consultations? I mean, I'm booked out for 6 weeks for consultations. If my consultations were 30 minutes or 20 minutes or 15 minutes, just to kind of have a very quick chemistry call, I could potentially take on a lot more clients. But I would probably need to figure out quite a effective way to weed out the clients that don't gel with me and have consultations with those who reach out and say, and where there's a better fit. So there's a lot of coaches out there who use a system that they've developed over the years, the kind of questions that you know your ideal client, so to speak, would answer in a particular way. You know, and some give them psychometrics beforehand, so they can, like, oh, I'm only going to be working with the INTP, MBTI types, you know, certain characteristics or certain values or certain industries or certain income. You know, some people put their prices on their website because they know a certain amount of client will not even reach out because the price is too high for them. You know, that's a really good argument for putting your prices on the website, because you kind of filter out the people who might not be a good match for your coaching. But as you say, we make a lot of assumptions when we do that. So we need to be a bit careful. But sometimes we need to be pragmatic and say, well, if there's 100 people who want to work with me, but I only have time to have conversations with 10, you know, how do I develop a system of pre-questions or, you know, pre-interviews or something? How do I design my website so that the right kind of client finds their way to me? And then I use my time effectively.
Yeah. I think as a coach's business grows, the system needs to be upgraded. So, for example, I don't invite people into a 2-hour conversation anymore unless I know them from a previous, like, unless there's an existing relationship. So if there's someone new, there's always a 20-minute call.
Okay.
So in that 20-minute call, it's basically just like a good fit or no fit call. So we get really clear in that 20-minute call whether that person can move into the next phase or not. And and again, you know, if it's not a good fit, you know, I can refer them to someone else, or, you know, I have a smaller program that I can refer them to. But it's just really important that we evolve with our business, because you cannot just have conversations anymore. If you, like with yourself, your calendar is full for the next 6 weeks, you know, this is one of the systems that you want to look at is, well, I could have some pre-questions, but then I could have like a 15 or 20-minute qualification call, right? So the way I look at it is like, if you look at X Factor or Idols, you know, if they had only 20 people apply for that, they could just say, well, you can all come and let's check who's really good. But if you have thousands of people apply, you know, they just have like a 1 minute, well, you get 1 minute, show us what you got.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we can do this really, it's kind of like a quality control, but we can do this from a place of service. It doesn't need to be just all business.
Yeah. Right. So guys, if you're out there and you can't wait to be coached by Siwash, you know, there are thousands of you, just apply and, you know, we give you a minute each and you just give it all you got. And
Yeah,
then
that would be cool.
we eliminate one every week until we have
The coach X Factor.
Love it.
the S factor. Anyway, thank you. Awesome. That was great. Guys, I hope that was useful to you. And I think that there was a lot more coming out of this than I had thought, to be honest. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and if you have questions around this, just put it in the comments, and also let us know like what's been one thing you got out of this conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to know the systems that other people developed to filter out the right clients. That would be super interesting to know.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. See you next time.
Take care.
Hey everybody! If you found this conversation helpful for you and your coaching practice, then there's a couple of ways that you can support the podcast and stay up to date with future episodes. Obviously, you can subscribe here on YouTube if that's your jam. If you want to get it straight into your inbox, never miss an episode, there's a link in the description to can sign up for our mailing list. You can leave us a review or follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and come join us on Facebook. We'll get the conversation going there. Obviously, leave us a comment. You can support us on Patreon. And any way you choose to do that, tell a friend, whatever you want to do. We really appreciate it, and we hope you get a lot out of it. So, see you next time.